The RTX 3060, currently the most popular modern desktop graphics card on Steam hardware surveys. Today we are revisiting this card and see how it performs in Fortnite's latest chapter, Chapter 4. As always, we're going to be running our EVGA RTX 3060 12GB card on our Ryzen 5800 X3D system, and we'll be testing all three APIs in Fortnite, DX11, DX12, and performance mode. And for those who are new to the channel, we do these benchmark analysis videos to help guide you on which products to get for your gaming rig when we do our PC build specs guides. Alright boys, let's start off with our synthetic test. Once again, a classic side-by-side comparison for all three modes on a controlled environment which are using replays. We've set this on a realistic, competitive, or low settings to show real-world performance. And as always boys, we are using a capture card here, so there is no performance loss. And for those who are new, I want you guys to focus not on the average FPS, but try to look at all three metrics here. Average FPS, 1% lows and 0.1% lows. Obviously, we'll get high numbers in our setup here, but what we need to look at is the relationship of these three figures. If these figures are really close to each other, the closer they are to each other, the better your competitive performance would be. If your average FPS is way higher than your 1% lows, and that basically means that you may have some degree of stutter, and this may affect your precision. Alright, let's go with our standard creative mode and see how the RTX 3060 12GB performs. This is pretty straightforward, nothing on the map, just running around doing some builds. And once again boys, on these synthetic tests, we have run this test at least 3 times before we start recording to ensure that you are looking at the best case scenario. Okay, let's start off with DX11. Right off the bat here, we can see that our GPU utilization has shot up and maxing it out to 97%. Like our previous Fortnite analysis video with the RX 6600 XT, Fortnite's Chapter 4 is definitely using more GPU resources compared to Chapter 3. Our GPU is definitely getting a bit warmer here, reaching 150 watts of GPU power, and the temperature is reaching 75 degrees Celsius. VRAM on the setup is around 3.5 gigabytes, which is okay considering that we have 12 gigabytes on this card. CPU utilization is around 50% here boys. We are running high clock speeds at 4400 MHz with around 65 degrees temperature, and do note we are using a 240mm AIO here. One thing to remember here boys is that the 5800 X3D doesn't have any auto overclocking feature, or what they call PBO. AMD removed the 5800 X3D's overclocking headroom because it was a prototype for their V-Cache chips and they wanted to avoid it from getting too hot or any potentially power issues. Anyway, our RAM here boys have gone past about 10 gigabytes. FPS is high on this mode, going between 300 to 400. In terms of frame times, one thing I noticed when I was doing this run is that there are some random status here. Not really that bad, but they are likewise rare. The overall experience is still pretty good. Before we proceed boys, you probably know that Fortnite's PC hardware performance changes with every patch, season, or chapter. And we will be doing more of these tests during those occasions, so if this is important to you, do hit that subscribe button so you wouldn't miss out when we put these benchmark analysis videos out. Okay, let's carry on with performance mode. As always with performance mode, there are lesser visual details here, and hence our GPU usage is way lesser compared to the standard DX11 or even DX12. And our run here, GPU utilization is not maxed out and only running at around 70%. We are using the EVGA dual fan model here boys, so unfortunately our temperature is around 70 degrees and GPU power is reaching all the way up to 140 watts. VRAM is less than 2 gigabytes. Meanwhile, FPS is pretty good, running between 400 to 600 FPS, just amazing. Now in this setup, our Ryzen 5800 X3D is likewise running at around 4400 MHz. Temperatures remains the same at around 65 degrees Celsius with around 80 watts of power. And as always boys, if you've got any question about our specs, there are all in the description. Frame times with performance mode is pretty stable. I mean, just look at that one boys. No wide range on our frame times. It's pretty consistent so far. When I was running this one, it was pretty smooth. There are micro stutters in some areas, which is pretty normal in the VR game because you've got servers and textures loading while you're exploring a map. However, I might add that these episodes are very rare. Like most of the time, your gaming performance is really smooth and definitely no complaints here. Compared to DX11, I think performance mode feels slightly better. Finally, we have DX12. Like the previous DX12 test, this mode is probably the one that takes a while to stabilize. I mean, we've run probably more than 3 times this test just to stabilize the results. For reference, performance mode reached stability about after 1 run. So same as DX11, GPU utilization for our RTX 3060 12GB in DX12 is nearly maxed out, running up to 98% usage and continues to run a bit hot too at around 75 degrees Celsius. GPU power has reached 150 watts, which is similar to our DX11 run. VRAM is now at 3.8GB, which is slightly increased compared to our DX11 results. FPS does tend to run around 300 FPS and sometimes dropping to high 200s. The Ryzen 5800X3D performance is similar on all the other tests, hovering at around 65 degrees Celsius. RAM, however, on this mode has now reached 13.3GB. That's a huge increase compared to DX11, which only has around 10GB of RAM consumed. Going for frame times, DX12 does have more frame time inconsistencies compared to performance mode or DX11. We've noticed this happens a lot when you go into a new area and it sort of like loads that environment at the same time. Now, because of such, we probably wouldn't recommend DX12, especially when you're comparing it against DX11 or performance mode. The RTX 3060 12GB card definitely has good performance for Fortnite Chapter 4. We previously did the same test with our RX 6600 XT, which is technically a much faster card versus the RTX 3060. If you're interested in that video, I would suggest you click this link right here, and we'll see you guys over there.